Welcome to The Adult Man. My name is William, and today we're talking about the 11 best books that every guy should read before they turn 30. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, guys, I spent a lot of time in my early 20s, mid 20s reading tons of books. I went through, and one year, I think when I was 23, I read 50 books. When I was 24, I read 60 books, and when I was 25, I capped it off. I read, I think, over 70 books. Didn't go, that was my cap, and that's probably gonna be the cap of my life. But anyway, the point is, I read a ton growing up and in my 20s, and I wanted to break down kind of, if I were to only pick 11 books that really made a huge impact on my life, these are those 11 books. So I'm just gonna go straight through them right now. I kind of broke them down into 3 categories. Those are life goals, science, and what the world's all about. And then the third category is fiction. So those are 3 categories, 11 books. Here we go. Book number 1 is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. The main thing I learned from this book, I know you've heard it before because it's a massively popular book, but the main thing I learned from this one is that, you know, coming up to 30, you have to begin with the end in mind. Whatever your goal is, whatever you want, you have to picture what that is and what that's gonna look like, and then you just kind of work your way back. So write that goal down, figure out how you're gonna get there, and start. So when you begin your goal, when you begin whatever it is, you already know what it looks like on the other side. You just make it point A to point B. So again, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, check it out. Book number 2 is called Manhood for Amateurs. It's by writer Michael Chabon. He's a great fiction writer, but he kind of turned his ability towards writing a series of essays on manhood, fatherhood, being a son. And while he's a little bit older, I think he's in his 50s, maybe even in his 60s at this point. But the point is, he writes a lot from a very unique perspective about some of the problems that as a 30-year-old, we're gonna face in the next decade. So again, Michael Chabon, Manhood for Amateurs, gotta check it out. Book number 3 is called Principles by Ray Dalio. Now this guy is one of the most wealthy people in the world because he's a hedge fund manager for Bridgewater Capital. This book is not all about investing, but I highly recommend it if you want to get more into personal finance and investing. This is a great book for that. But really this book, more importantly, is all about, you know, how to live life and how to work effectively and just be a better person. The big thing I've picked up from this book is that it doesn't matter if you have weaknesses. If you have weaknesses that are hard to get around, all you need to do is you need to find a workaround, put a system in place to get around that weakness, or you need to team up with someone who can help you with that weakness. Again, one of the most mind-blowing things that stood out to me here is he says, it doesn't matter if you have a weakness, if you can pair it with a solution. So again, Principles, Ray Dalio, check it out. Book number 4 on our list is called Total Money Makeover. It's by Dave Ramsey. I love this guy. He's a personal finance guru. He's got a YouTube channel, podcast. You gotta check him out. Basically, he distills he nuggetizes his whole philosophy of personal finance into a book called Total Money Makeover. He breaks down building personal finance, having great personal finances into a 7-step formula. And the one that really stuck out to me was the idea that you pay yourself first. So that means any paycheck you get or any amount of money you get, take a percentage, set that percentage out like it was a bill that you had to pay. If it's 10%, 15%, whatever it is, and you put that into a savings account, whether that's a saving for a house or saving for your retirement, whatever it is, the idea is you're paying yourself first as if your well-being, your financial well-being was a bill you had to pay. So Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover, check it out. Book number 5, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, this one is another classic from the 1930s, 1940s era. Napoleon Hill was a big disciple of Dale Carnegie, and he devoted his entire life's work to figuring out what were the main things that hyper-wealthy people did that made them so successful. And what he boiled it down to was that they can take their desires, what they wanted, and they could focus on them so much that it became something they needed to have. And once they needed to have that thing, they got it. So basically the main takeaway from this book is whatever you need to have in your life, you can go get. But you need to figure out how to turn that want into a need, and that's the hard part. So again, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, check it out. Now I want to move into the more sciencey area of our list and what I'm calling What's the World About? Book number 6 is called Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I hope I didn't mess that up, though I know I messed it up, so sorry Yuval, but I do love your book. Again, Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari. There's so much page after page in this book that really describes who humans are as a species. And one of the most beautiful things that I picked up from this book is that we are all so drawn to stories. Stories are anything from, it could be something like money, and this is a construct, but we really use these constructs to bind together and to do crazy collaborations and cooperations, like building this camera and this computer and us talking over the internet. And these things are amazing, and they're uniquely human because of our ability to use stories to cooperate. And that's truly mind-blowing. So again, Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari, gotta check it out. Number 7 on our list is called A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. This one, you don't need to know about the theory of general relativity to have a happy life, but if you're at all interested in learning more about the physical universe, this is the best book. It's about 250 to 300 pages, very short, and it packs in the knowledge about the physical world in a way that I have never read in any other book. Stephen Hawking was one of the best teachers who've ever lived, and highly recommend this book. Book number 8, it's called The Tale of Dueling Neurosurgeons by an author, Sam Keen. Now this book reads a lot like, if you've ever heard the podcast Radiolab, he's frequently on that, and his writing style is very similar in that it's highly scientific, but at the same time, it's so interesting, so engaging, really funny, really fun, and his stories are amazing. He talks about how the human brain works, how things can go wrong, and more importantly, what I got out of it is how you can influence your own brain to get what you want out of life. So again, Tale of the Dueling Neurosurgeons by Sam Keen, check it out. Next book on our list, book number 9, is called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Now, Malcolm Gladwell is another one of those writers like Sam Keen, where everything he touches is just so fascinating, so much fun to read. And in this one, he really covers exactly what it is about humans that kind of starts large movements and how larger movements, how they begin. It's so interesting. He really goes into kind of the 80-20 Pareto's law, and if you haven't heard of that, check this out because there's no other book that demonstrates it as perfectly as he does. Moving into the last part of our list, this is the fiction section. Book number 10 is The Sun Also Rises by Hemingway. Now this is his first book. It's also, in my opinion, his best book. And it talks about, really it gets into the condition, first of all, of what soldiers face coming home from war and that difficulty acclimating back to society. But it also talks about what happens if you ignore your problems and you run away from your problems, and it explores that aspect of the human condition. Now it is in the man code that every man must read Hemingway, and this book is, I think it's like 250 pages. It's an easy read. It's quick, and it's a good book. And so if you want to pass that man code and pass your man test, you got to read Hemingway. Start with The Sun Also Rises. Book number 11 on our list, it's by F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's called The Great Gatsby. Now this is written along the same time as Hemingway. Hemingway and Fitzgerald used to box together. And this book, to me, spoke a lot to me later on in my 20s because, we spend a lot of our early 20s going out, partying and all that cool stuff. But in The Great Gatsby, unlike any other book I've ever read, Fitzgerald really encapsulates that sort of loneliness that you can feel if you spend too much time focusing on partying and having fun, and it just kind of leaves you feeling a little bit empty. Fitzgerald really can put that feeling into perfect words so that, for me, it helped me kind of understand that feeling even more and understand when I was feeling that feeling. And that allowed me to kind of push that aside and move towards more fulfilling things in my life. So again, for that reason, especially for dudes coming up to their 30s or sometime in your 20s, The Great Gatsby, highly recommend it for that reason. So I'm not gonna leave you hanging without a bonus book. Gotta have a bonus book. This one is The Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. It's a collection of short fiction stories. If you ever saw the movie Arrival, that was based on one of the stories in this book. But again, this collection of stories kind of brings elements of everything that I was talking about earlier in this video, from philosophy to the physical world to, the human condition. This book, in a bunch of different stories, really ties those ideas together in a way that I've never read anybody else. I've never read anything else like it. So again, The Story of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. That is my bonus book for guys looking to read great books before they turn 30. If you enjoyed this video, please tap the subscribe button down below and also give us a like. It really helps us out and I very much appreciate it. If you want more recommendations for great books, head over to theadultman.com. We have an article called The 75 Best Books for Men. That's up there, that's live right now, and it gives you tons of great reading recommendations so that you can sit down and expand your mind. So thank you again, guys, for joining us. And until next time, stay manly.